Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by the two Paddies. We've got Paddy Sinnott and Paddy McGilp. How are we going to do this, guys? Is it young and old? I mean, it's Patrick and Paddy. How are we going to do it?
Who's the old one? I'm surely I'm not the old one, eh? Because I'm a fresh-faced young chap here.
The two Paddies. You know what? I'm going to go for Patrick top right, Paddy down the bottom. How's that? How's that sound?
Works well. I think that works well.
Yes, absolutely. I was interested yesterday to read a blog by our very own Liam Carrigan talking about the Nepo boss that Rangers are looking at. And it made me look at Brendan's record. I mean, I knew it was good, guys, but we're going for 12 out of 13 trophies under Brendan Rodgers. Patrick McGilp, I mean, listen, if you're going to try and go toe-to-toe with this guy, you need to know your onions, don't you? You need to know your spuds. You need to know your chops.
You do. And I'm sure, being the son of Carlo Ancelotti, David is probably quite full of himself, being the Real Madrid assistant manager, but ego and confidence don't make up for a lack of knowledge and skill and know-how and experience. And I think Brendan, obviously, his record, I mean, 12 out of 13 would be impressive come sort of next Saturday, but I think it sort of does him a disservice, actually, because I think that league that Neil Lennon came in and steadied the shine for 29, 30 games, or sort of 27 games, I think it was. So, we were 8 clear when Lennon took over. So, Lennon sort of he took charge of 3 of the 5 cup games. So I suppose it's his Scottish Cup, but I think Brendan's been done a disservice not getting that league winners medal. But there you go. And of course that Kilmarnock game from last August, that's the one sort of blip on his record, that League Cup defeat that we suffered. But it's a fantastic record. You've got to say probably the best manager in Scottish football history in terms of success rate over the course of more than one season anyway. So a tremendous record. We're lucky to have him. Hopefully he's here beyond the end of next season. And any manager, whether it's McInnes coming to Hearts or Ancelotti Jr. Going over to Ibrox, they'll need to know their stuff. And I think they probably need a bit of a war chest actually to compete with Celtic next season.
This is the big thing, isn't it? Coming in and steadying the ships, all fine and well, but actually to compete over the campaign. You mentioned a game against Kilmarnock, Paddy. When we look at that, Alan Muir, the departed Alan Muir. When you look at some of the decisions on that particular day, with Said Haksabanovic getting taken down in the box, clear penalty. Greg Taylor being off the park when Kilmarnock scored the goal as well. But you know what? Even beyond that, Paddy, the record that Brendan Rodgers has is sensational, isn't it? And he was talking yesterday about people taking things for granted, maybe taking success for granted, taking trebles for granted. I talk about people as in those outside of the world of Celtic looking in going, it's a one-horse league, it's easy to do that kind of stuff. It absolutely is not. And I think it's time Brendan got the credit for what he's done here.
I agree with that. I think that even the reaction to Brendan winning the Manager of the Year or Premiership Manager of the Year last year from those outside the club tells you exactly how much it's taken for granted. You've got playing supporters for English teams telling you it's a pub league, the usual nonsense you hear on social media. And then you've obviously, I've seen a few tweets for like Hibs and Rangers fans saying that with the budget he's got, he should be squishing this league, but that's not always the case. I mean, how many times have we seen even quality players come to Scotland and struggle to play for Celtic and struggle to kind of deal with the demands of playing for Celtic? I think Rodgers, what he's done is he came back under an immense amount of pressure. And with that amount of pressure, he delivered a double in his first season. And now he's on a record for another record treble. So to have 3 trebles, a Celtic manager will make him the first manager ever to do it in the club's history. I think he's actually the most decorated manager in the club's history as well. I don't know I think I read somewhere along the lines about that, or maybe their recent history. But since he's come back, he's been tremendous. And like you say, like young Patrick said there, the only blip in his record is that League Cup defeat to Kilmarnock, which I'm pretty sure he was smart in it, because he could be on for another double treble if it wasn't for that this season.
The thing, you look through the record books and you'll see people like Willie Maley, who was the Celtic manager for decades, Jock Stein, obviously, with that incredible run of success. But what you're saying there is spot on in terms of the percentage of trophies won.
Yeah.
You know, nobody's beating Brendan Rodgers. Nobody in
No.
Scottish football's beating Brendan Rodgers. I don't know what the figures are, but nobody's beating that record. 12 out of 13, if, of course, we win the Scottish Cup, is an unbelievable record. And you were talking about transfers, and we're talking about chucking money at a problem, chucking money at something. The one season, actually, over the last few years, if you go back 5 years, right, and I've not actually checked this, but just from memory, the one season where I don't think we had a net profit was probably when we went out and bought Barkas and a Yeti, and we, you know, and what did that do? What did it do? It showed us that chucking money at it doesn't always result in the in the success that we're enjoying now. So yeah, I hear that all the time about Celtic throwing money at a problem, but it's our money.
You know, I was about to say that. I mean, it's like, it's not as if we've just found this money under a pillow somewhere. We've earned it in the last 2 decades, a shrewd financial management. Now, I know a lot of fans will probably be thinking we don't spend enough, and there's probably an element of truth in that, considering the net spend, I think, the last 4 seasons has been pretty much in a positive. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's our cash. We've not relied on a benefactor or anything like that, or run up with millions of pounds worth of debt. Try to win these trophies. We've done it the right way. So the whole, I think we must be the only country in Europe that focuses on budgets when a team is successful. You don't hear anything like that when it's Bayern Munich or Real Madrid, Barcelona. I mean, Bayern Munich won, I think, was it 9 out of the last 10 league titles? Didn't hear anything like that for their media. They celebrate the success, whereas the media and fans, well, I can get why fans of other clubs do it, but the media certainly in Scotland seem to be hell-bent and downplaying the fact that their success has been tremendous for the last kind of decade or so. So it's baffling.
No, it is, and you know, we talk about other things that happen in and around the world of Scottish football. I mean, what we're hearing now is a massive sea change in the attitude towards referees, for example. So up until a certain point, you know, with regards to not conceding penalties, the amount of penalties certain teams were getting, any kind of decision that would go against anyone playing Rangers, and then all of a sudden, when the balance is so. It's now a fair kind of playing ground, or fairer, let's just say, Patrick, in relation to that. All of a sudden, there's a conspiracy against Rangers. It's incredible how these things change. I mean, I read that now. I think, are you serious? I mean, we've spoken about what I believe to be the turning point, the watershed moment where Brendan Rodgers has come out all guns firing after the game at Tynecastle with Yang getting sent off and Iwata getting penalised for a penalty that he had no knowledge of. And since then, things have changed. You know, Crawford Allen stepped down, Willie Collins come in. VAR isn't perfect because the system we're using is not good enough. But in terms of the decision-making process, I think you now see something that is more aligned to fairness. There's always going to be bias in all walks of life, Patrick, other than in Scottish refereeing, apparently. There's unconscious bias. But I think we're cutting out a fair bit of the incompetence. You just got to look at, and I've used this as a barometer at times, Tavernier's penalty record or Tavernier's goal record. There was 4 seasons where he was scoring goals like a centre forward, 20 plus, 25. Incredible, unbelievable. It's an anomaly, though, when you look at the rest of his career. And he's right back down to what a right back taking penalties should be scoring, Patrick. So these things do change it. But within Scottish football and the wider society of Scotland, I think we've got to continually call it out. We've seen Brendan doing it about referees. We've seen Sinisalo doing it about objects getting thrown on the park. Do you think the board are strong enough? Or are you of the view, Patrick, that, you know what, we don't want to be hearing about them every other week? We don't want a statement every Sunday night. What's your take on it?
No, I think the club should be stronger in these things. You know, you're right in what you're saying. I think we spoke about it last week that it was Brendan that called out John Beaton. It was Brendan that called out Alan Muir back in February for the ball that went out of play, and it was a factual overturn, even though there was no camera angle showing it as a factual overturn of the ball being out the pitch. So it is Brendan that calls these things out. He obviously, I don't know how these media things work, but Sinisalo was up for press before the Hibs game, and it actually took him to come out and say something before anything was raised about these bottles being thrown onto the park. And you know, the cameras never picked it up, but as he said in his presser, it's, you know, it's batteries, it's coins, it's cups, it's everything. And obviously, football fans are in the moment and energetic and full of passion and stuff. But there's no excuse for throwing, objects that can cause physical harm. And, you'd assume that they're intended to cause physical harm. Why else would you throw a coin or a battery onto a pitch? So you're right in what you're saying. It is Brendan and it is the players who are driving these statements as opposed to the club. I was quite disappointed actually, slightly off tangent, but the Celtic had an audience with Pope Francis 18 months ago, and they didn't release a statement on their social media when he died. I'm quite happy to go and visit them and post about that, but they hide it away in their website, these statements. So they release statements when it suits them, and then they don't when they really should be doing. So it's disappointing, and it's good that we do have a manager. I think we have had a manager under Ange as well, who came out and defended the fans and defended the club when he should have done, and when it was maybe awkward for him to do so. So I would like to see more statements from the club on stuff like that, because it is about the welfare of the players, the welfare of the supporters, and standing up for the fan base and the club as a whole. But I mean, you're absolutely spot on about the turning point. That was the turning point, both for Celtic in terms of form. I mean, we played Dundee the week before that Hearts game. That Hearts game was obviously a blip because of those refereeing decisions. But since then, we have been flying. We have been totally unstoppable domestically for the last 14 months. And obviously with Crawford Allen leaving and Willie Collum taking his place, refereeing decisions have certainly become better. Refereeing has certainly become more transparent with his monthly appearance on YouTube, explaining the sort of more talked about decisions. It's not perfect. It probably will never be perfect, especially with the sort of amateur camera angles we get with VAR in this country. But we've certainly taken great strides forward in the last 12 months. So it is on the up, and hopefully it can get better next season.
Who would have thought, Paddy, that would be sitting here going on about how great it is that Willie Collum's been promoted? I mean, you would never have guessed that, mate. He was rotten as a ref.
The only referee award apparently for something I've never seen.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking. On the Sinisalo thing, though, absolutely fair play to him. And it looks as though he's going to be playing tonight. We're going to get into kind of like predicted teams for this evening, because it would appear that there's going to be a few changes if you listen to Brendan Rodgers' press conferences over the last week or so. But that was just one in a long line of incidents, Paddy. I mean, just from the top of my head, you've got Sinisalo, lucky not to be scudded on the head with a glass bottle of bucket. And they're tough wee glass bottles, That's going to cause you some damage if it hits your head.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the last time we played at Ibrox, it's a coin. Engels gets hit with a coin in the corner. Going back to Angie's teams, in fact, last season, I think it was with Matt O'Reilly with a bottle of bucket, wasn't it? Just after he ran away.
Did a coach not get hit with something as well? One of the backroom staff get hit with something, I'm sure.
His head on him. And these are the things we're aware of, incidentally. There's going to be other incidents that the cameras don't pick up as well. But the Matt O'Reilly one, it was only caught in the Celtic unique angle, I think. That where they've got somebody behind the goals. And then, of course, you've got the Joe Hart one with the broken glass. You can go further back with batteries with Lee Griffiths, with a fan running on the park, and then just, the steward's putting him back in his seat. Oh, it's all right to attack Scott Brown. So this kind of thing. I mean, I remember the press reaction to Brown being attacked by that fan, Paddy, and people were coming out. I remember Vinnie Jones coming out, Joey Barton, all the great names of British media. They were coming out and going, "Aye, he needs a slap." That was their reaction to it.
I know. It's beyond me. It's absolutely baffling how it's just accepted that there just doesn't seem to be any repercussions. It just seems to be the norm now that it happens that regular. I suppose a bit like I was winning trophies. But I think there definitely needs to be something, whether we put up or we force clubs to put nets up or whatever. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about, like Patrick was saying, their players' welfare. They come to play football to entertain fans. They're not here to dodge missiles and to be hit with anything. I mean, the Joe Hart one I thought would have been the one that would have maybe changed the way of our opinion on missiles being thrown, because at the end of the day, that was broken glass, it was shattered everywhere in his goal mouth. The apathy towards it is baffling. I don't understand it. It should be called out every opportunity. And I think, thank God, Brendan did it right after full time. Sinisalo done it the other day. His press conference shows like this do it every other week as well, to call it out, because if it didn't, then it would just get brushed away.
It would, it absolutely would. I remember on that particular occasion again praising Joe Hart because he was the guy saying to the ref, "Look, I'll just take the team off." He played the proper captain's role, and he was
But
going
you
to
see,
just
even at
round the
that, Paul
boys up.
John, he was the one that was the first one to pick up the glass. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
He was like picking it up. It took like an age to get anybody on the park to even clear the goal mouth. Him and the referee went to the referee, and Joe was having to pick them up with his gloves on. It's embarrassing.
You know, there's also, and I keep going on about, people might think this is boring, but you know, there's an issue around how these items are actually retrieved. Because to have a Rangers sub running on and just picking up a bottle is no good enough. If you
I know.
actually want to, you know, if you want to investigate this criminally, you need to protect the evidence. So the game has to stop. Absolutely. And there needs to be a protocol where someone from the police then goes in and retrieves that with the blue gloves on and all that stuff in an evidence bag. It can't be the case that a Rangers player contaminates evidence. And then months down the line, oh, we couldn't actually catch the culprit of that one because the CCTV didn't pick it up. There's DNA all over a glass bottle. So these are the things that, you know what, we hate it when people call our league tin pot and then you just watch it unfolding in front of your eyes and you think, that is tin pot.
That's why.
That's exactly why. That's before we talk about the football. Derek McInnes has, you know, he's got the Hearts job. If ever there was a match made in heaven, a manager in a football club, Patrick, it is him. They've not a great season, but you know, if you listen to the likes of Alan Morrison talking about football data and all the science behind that, it looks as though they're making some moves behind the scenes in relation to how they're going to be approaching this. You know, all joking aside, Derek McInnes, I think in Scottish football, he's going to be a safe pair of hands for a club like Hearts. I always thought Stephen Robinson would have been a good appointment for Hearts. And I seen loads yesterday, people get a bit excited about this, about splitting Celtic and Rangers and all that kind of stuff. It's going to take a lot more than that, isn't it, for a club to split Celtic and Rangers, I would have thought.
Yeah, I can't see Derek McInnes doing that. I mean, he's obviously done it with Aberdeen the first two seasons that Rangers came into the league in, 16, 17, 17, 18. But that was obviously they were coming up from the Championship and, the financial position was a slightly different to what it is now. Aberdeen had been that second place club for quite some time. But to actually, as an insurgent force, as a Hearts manager, to actually do that, their best chance is probably this season because this is probably the poorest Rangers have been since they've been in the league in the last sort of 8, 9 years. I mean, I think their points total is going to be quite low out of the last sort of 9 seasons. So, I can't see McInnes being the one to do that. Even just last week with Tony Bloom putting that investment into Hearts, I think a lot of folk were maybe it sort of perked them up in their seat a wee bit, thinking, we might need to pay attention to this. And in a few years, they could be a force. But I think McInnes is such a strange appointment for Bloom to have made. It doesn't seem to fit the narrative. I think everyone thought they might go for, a quote unquote sexier appointment, someone from Scandinavia or some, Brentford coach or something like that.
I don't know. McInnes has got some tan on him, so.
No, he loves the sunbeds, doesn't he?
A well-groomed beard as well.
Oh, man, he's well up there, I think.
The facial installation is it.
Sorry,
the thing that sickened me though was that, you again going back to the media, using platforms almost as a job interview. Sitting there on Sky TV talking himself up. Chris Boyd, come on, he couldn't be further up his backside. And it was like that was an absolute embarrassment watching that unfolding. But that's what they're using, and the media are all for it. Patrick, it would seem they're allowing them. Mm-hmm. They're allowing them to do that.
Aye, and this is Chris Boyd who played for Kilmarnock 3 times. I suppose a Kilmarnock legend trying to bum up the manager for a quote unquote better job. It is pretty pathetic, and it was almost quite cringeworthy and awkward to watch. The way that it sort of played out on Sky, it's a really amateur way of doing things. And again, going back to that tin pot league thing, I don't think you'd have seen that in England personally. Just the sort of the small nature of it, I thought. But I mean, overall, it's as you say, it's probably a match made in heaven. Derek McInnes and Hearts, so obviously he'll get them battle hardened and defensive and hard to play against, and I'm sure that'll win them a lot of points. But to then take the next step, I think they would need someone else. But I'm sure he'll probably get them top 6 next season if he's got that sort of data in that. analytical side behind him to help him. He'll get more funds at Hearts, I'm sure, than he will at Kilmarnock. He's obviously been about Scottish football a long time. He'll know a lot of contacts. So, I mean, it's a decent appointment if they want to get back into the top six, but I don't think he'll be there long term. I don't think.
The thing as well, obviously, had Tony Dock at Aberdeen. He's done obviously the kind of wheels fell off a wee bit this season, but he's done really well since taking the reins himself as well. Loads of great comments coming through. We're going to run through some of them right now, and then we're going to be talking about this evening's game. We're going to Pittodrie. Is it a dress rehearsal? Brendan said it isn't. He says he's not really treating it like that. He's treating it all about getting certain players minutes in their legs. So we'll see what the team's going to be. But I'm pretty sure there'll be a few, not surprises, but fringe players coming in to the team. John Mullane, you're in on the YouTube. Broken glass was insane. Yes, it absolutely was. I mean, imagine having broken glass on the best pitch in Scotland. The only thing you can get a trophy for. Honestly, and you're littering it with broken glass. Sure.
Never heard that trophy before in my life, but there you go.
By the way, see, when I saw it, Paddy, I'm looking at this is the issue with AI. I love AI, it's great, right? But this is the issue with it. It's like, is that a real photo? I mean, did Rangers did they actually put that out? Seriously, because that's embarrassing. Paul Maguire, Sinisalo in goals, Alistair Johnson at right back with Trusty and Scales central defenders, Taylor at left back, McGregor, Engels and Bernardo with Kuhn, Kenny and Ida up top. Well, I'm going to keep that up, Paul, and I'm going to ask you, Paddy, look at that team. Tell me, what do you agree with? And if there's anybody you don't agree with, who would you bring into the side tonight?
Well, I did my predicted 11 this afternoon on 67 Hill Hill, and it's probably just published it now. And my team's slightly different for that. I do have Sinisalo because obviously Rodgers said he was going to play anyway. I've got AJ back to get his minutes up. I've got Trusty and Skills, but I've Schlupp at left back. I think he might rest Taylor tonight. With the cup final in mind, maybe Taylor will come back on Saturday. Got Calmack in there, but I do have Bernardo, but I don't have Engels. I've got Calmack, McCowan and Bernardo in my midfield to rest Engels and Hattati with the Scottish Cup in mind. Then up front, I've got Ida and I've got Yang and Forrest. That would be my attacking three. I think there's going to be big changes tonight. I think Rodgers will want to protect his squad. Don't really care what the score is tonight, to be honest. To be perfectly honest, would like to win, but I think it's important to protect the squad for the Scottish Cup final. I mean, the treble's all that matters.
Without a doubt. I mean, this is a big thing, right? Every game, and we'll cover the game as we always do, and you go in and you want to win, and if we're behind at halftime, you'll be disappointed. But the bigger picture is exactly that. You know, the priority here is winning the treble, winning that Scottish Cup final. And in doing so, making sure that people come through games unscathed, everybody's fit and sharp enough for that particular game, for selection. And if it means you tinker with the team, absolutely go for it. And it's probably more likely that the fringe players rather than the young players are going to get game time with that in mind. Because, you know, we talk about this all the time, Patrick. When does a young player get a game? And I just think that we've kind of failed, particularly during the first, you know, I say the first as if we're going to win another 9. Hopefully we do. The first 9 in a row run that we just kind of completed there. I don't think we gave enough game time to young players. You know, there's so many times at home, for example, where a couple of goals up, 3 goals up, give them half an hour, you know, and work on 3 or 4 players, give them as much minutes as you possibly can. Don't think we've done that enough. And I can't see it happening tonight because it's going to be more about making sure McCowan's sharp enough and Bernardo and players like that and, you know, resting guys. Probably not McGregor, the guy's the bionic man, but maybe guys like Taylor. Johnson's had a bit of rest. CCV's getting managed. Ida probably needs game time and goals in his legs and for his confidence. But I can see why Kenny is in Paul's team there because I feel a wee bit sorry for him. I'd completely written him off. Absolutely written him off, Patrick. Yeah, came over like a lot of guys do. Didn't seem to make the grade way back to Ireland. But it shows you a bit of character that he's come back, and he's broken into the team, albeit 7 substitute appearances. Will he get a start, do you think? Or do we just stick with the tried and tested with Adam Ida up top?
I'm not sure because Ida, I mean, he's far from having that place nailed down, isn't he? So I think Brendan might give him a chance. I think obviously there will be quite a few rested. There could be a lot of changes. Obviously, McCowan and Bernardo in the midfield. He's gone for Trusty and Scales at centre half at the weekend there. Forrest hasn't got his goal yet. He's missing a goal this season. I don't know if it needs to be a league goal or just a competitive goal, but I know
That's
he's
a league
scored
goal,
in
mate.
every season since his debut. Is it a league goal? Has he scored a league
goal,
goal in
aye.
every campaign?
Every
Right.
campaign. He's not scored in every cup competition, but every league campaign he has.
Right. So he needs a goal then.
Yeah.
Needs a goal in the next 2 games. A penalty on Trophy Day would be perfect, or a sort of last minute winner or something. I think that'd be brilliant. But I mean, you can hear it in the crowd, and you could see it in that Dundee United game. Players sort of giving them chances to shoot. I just think it's funny in a way, but it's also brilliant. So I think he'll play. I think he'll play from the start. I still think he'll go for Reader. And I think there could be even further changes at half time if we're say 2 or 3-0 up. I think Ida will start up top and then Kenny will come on. I think he'll probably start with McGregor, but look to change him as quickly as he can. Try and give him a wee bit of a rest. I've not watched extensively any sort of Aberdeen games, but I mean, my dad, my uncle, and I've seen clips from that Rangers game at the weekend. They don't look a good side at all at the moment. I know they had that perfect start, and then just a terrible run for 3-4 months. They sort of picked up again a wee bit, but they seem really, really inconsistent. They seem to go through these long spells of inconsistency. So they're having a bit of a poor time at the moment. So hopefully, the next 2 games we've got over the next 10 days against them, they'll be easy to swat aside. Because as much as the neutral might want drama and Sky might want drama, I'd rather just win both games 3-0 personally. So a few changes tonight. Probably see a fair bit of rotation at the weekend as well if we score a few early goals, and then sort of full throttle next Saturday for the cup final. Just try and win the game as quickly as possible.
Yeah, just being reminded by Paul. Yeah, the most recent 9 in a row, absolutely. The second 9 in a row, 60, 74 being the first. But certainly my only 9 in a row, and I'm hoping for my second to experience it, Paul, in my lifetime. And if you told me that, travelling through from Dunfermline or Oakley or whatever back in the early 90s, I'd have thought you were off your head. You're going to have 2 9 in rows. Absolutely. Bring it on. And I don't think it's wrong to talk about it either, because we had a good discussion a few weeks ago. Tino from the Celtic Exchange was in, and we were talking about this completing Scottish football, right? People think that's arrogant and all this kind of stuff. But it gets to the point where you need to ask about ambition, don't you? You need to say, right, what is your ambition every single season? Obviously, you need to win the league because you want to win the league and you want to maintain that domination. And then it gives you the gateway into the Champions League, and that allows you to progress further. And there's a huge financial incentive, but it can't always just be financial, can it? I mean, you've got to look at the prestige of playing at the top table and all that as well. But in relation to 10 in a row and the focus on it, as fans, absolutely, because it's something we've never done. It's the holy grail, Paddy. It's in terms of completing Scottish football, if you want to call it that. You can't claim to have done it until you've won 10. So we've been talking about, we've just wrapped up 4 in a row. It's an incredible achievement. But to go for 10, I mean, that takes you into the 2030s. That seems like a long, long time in the future. But you've got to have other ambitions to ensure that you achieve that for me. I think that what we did wrong the last time is our only ambition was win the league every season. And we'll get the 10. Whereas now, I think if you focus on your ambitions being in Europe, the league will look after itself because you are aiming higher. You're bringing in a higher caliber of player, and when the time comes, of coach as well. So I think the way we approach it now, we're far stronger at this stage, 4 in a row, Paddy, than we were under Ronnie Dyler with the 4 in a row last time round. We're in a much better place, but we need to build on it, don't we?
I think the last time we did it in a row, it was, I agree with you, it was kind of backward thinking. It was just about winning the league. I personally didn't see any ambition to kind of progress in Europe. And like you say, it's that old saying, look after the pennies, the pounds look after themselves. So if we look after Europe, then all the domestic stuff will look after itself. I would like to see more progression in the Champions League. I mean, how far could we really go in there? We're never going to win it, let's be honest. But could we get to the last 16 quarter-final stage? You don't know, possibly. I'd love to see in a European final. That might mean dropping down into the Europa League, or maybe the Conference League, which I think is certainly the Conference League would be a competition Celtic would have a better chance winning. But I don't think we could ever qualify for it. if we keep winning the league now that the rules have changed. And I don't even remember if we can get to the Europa League. Somebody might be able to tell me in the comments. But do we still drop into Europa League if we don't qualify?
We'd have to lose a qualifier basically. So the playoff game that we've got coming up in August, we'd have to lose the playoff.
Right, I wasn't sure about that. So I mean, but even at that, I would still take the Champions League over that any day, because that's where you want to be. And this new format certainly suits us, and it showed last season how well we competed in it. But no, I think the club should be focusing in Europe. That's clearly where the money is as well, and that's clearly what attracts the best players, and that's what's attracted Rodgers to come back, because his main ambition was to progress the club in Europe. And lo and behold, we qualify for not the last 16, but we qualify at the Champions League, and we're on the road for a domestic treble. So it kind of makes sense to focus in Europe for now, and then the 10 in a row will come.
Yeah, this is a big thing. And with regards to the standards, we're talking constantly about the standards that are set. Brendan Rodgers refers to that all the time as well. You set your standard as being, this is what we want to do in Europe. And anybody that comes up to your standards that high, that you'll be swatting a lot of the teams away.
Yeah.
And if you do get a challenge, then obviously you've got the caliber of player that you need in the squad. You've got that quality, and it's so important to keep them together. That's another thing we've been talking about. And Brendan was asked about this yesterday, about the fact that Kyogo was referenced, Patrick, and he was referenced as being a player who made it pretty clear to Brendan that he wanted to leave the club. So obviously that was facilitated, and we all love Kyogo and what he brought. But there was just something not quite clicking, I think, between him and maybe Brendan, or the style of play, the way that we approach that. And so he leaves the football club, and we flip it, and we bring Jota to the club, and we kind of move on pretty quickly. Although I think we're running, and most people will agree with this, one shot up top. So the question was kind of posed to Brendan around, is that something that any of your players have already raised? Talk about throwing negativity. Title. Oh, buddy. Title party, Scottish Cup final, running for a treble. Oh, is any of your players want to leave?
What do you think he was going to say? Do you know what I mean? Well, actually, Hatate and blah, blah. Honestly, man, some of the standard questions you get, these things fry man up.
It's incredible. And you're sitting there. And by the way, right, take into account the fact that you're kind of sitting there waiting your turn. Any time that Acsom have been involved in it, you don't know when your turn is. So you could be first, you could be last. So you've got to go in with quite a few questions, because other people may well ask the question that you've got lined up. But again, it was just the way. And I think we've been talking about it, Patrick, about the fact that, one of these summers, we're going to keep the best players that we've got and add to them. And what does that look like? And how does that impact your progression in Europe? There's a lot of stories flying about, of course. Maeda, there's clubs being connected to him. Whether or not it's just paper talk, speculation, who really knows? But we're looking at clubs. I was looking this morning. Leeds, West Ham, Crystal Palace have all been linked, and I use that word pretty loosely, linked to Dyson Maeda.
Go and look at the sources for them, though, because some of the sources aren't quite reputable, I would say. That's why we've not touched
this is the thing. Yeah, well, I know for a fact, and I'm not just blowing smoke up your backside here, that you won't run a story, Paddy, unless you've actually, checked it out. Whereas we're now in an age, and it's not going to change much for AI. We're in an age where there's loads of people who will write the story without checking it out. Yeah. It's a story, it's out there, they'll reword it, regurgitate it, put it out, get the clicks, and they'll be happy with that. But I do know that before you put something out, you actually check the sources and you check how legitimate these links are. And again, agents play the game, don't they? Agents throw wee stories out and all this kind of stuff. Absolutely. But I mean, for me, it would be, listen, we get over the loss of every player, Patrick. Don't get me wrong. We get over the loss of every player. But, the losses, the departures that we've seen over the last few years, it's actually been a couple every season for the last few seasons. Do you think we can avoid it? Because there's always that caveat, you can't keep an unhappy player. You can't keep an Edouard or an Ayer or a Christie. If they want to leave, they've got to leave. Or a Kyogo, for that matter. It's a really difficult balance to strike, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. There's so many different variables when it comes to stuff like this. I remember, when I first got a season ticket, I think Ronnie Dyler summed it up pretty well. To be able to sell your best player or cash in on one of your best players and to keep progressing, you can do it with one player, but you can't do it with 2, 3, 4. And I think it was Virgil van Dijk that left in that summer. And obviously his second season wasn't as good as his first. to put it mildly. And I think that's a really good way of looking at it. We lost Matt O'Reilly, and we've managed to rebound. And I think most people would say this season's been better than last season, as much as O'Reilly was fantastic last season. So you can only really lose one, maybe two at a time. We've obviously lost Kyogo mid-season, but we have sort of rebounded from that. And there's obviously all these links with different players. Maeda, has a few clubs interested. I think Hatate, there's always rumours about Hatate. Kun, with the drop off in form, as his head been turned, there's sort of speculation in recent months. So I think there's always worries and stuff about, your best players leaving or wanting to leave. I'd like to think that, players don't mind being here. 25, 30 grand a week, Champions League football, winning 3 trophies a year, playing in front of 60,000 people, working under, one of, if not the best British manager at the moment. I think that's an all right place to be. To be fair, I'm guilty of it myself. I was thinking, what is Arne Engels, 20 years old? Why does he want to move from the Bundesliga to Scotland? But we are quite an attractive prospect when we've got a good manager, a good squad, and in the Champions League. And obviously, with all that comes winning trophies. So I'd like to think, there's not a lot of unhappy players, maybe one or two, but I'd like to think we can keep the squad together and only sell on the fact that, a player wants to leave or we're getting an offer we can't refuse. A bit like Jota, a bit like Tierney, a bit like Matt O'Reilly. So, you obviously don't know what's going to happen in the summer. The whole of Saudi Arabia might want to buy, half of their team. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But, say if Kun goes, we can get another winger in and then maybe one or two reinforcements on top of that. But I mean, to be fair, it's also about ambition. I think we need to show very publicly our ambition. I don't think there's any Rexford players that are Wrexham, not Rexford. Don't think there's any Wrexham players publicly wanting to leave Wrexham. They are quite clearly on the up and promoting the fact that they're on the up. Newcastle a few years ago, Arsenal in the last couple of years, teams that are on the up, they quite easily retain their players. And I think you've seen that under Ange. I don't think we had many, wanting to jump out the door after Ange's first season. We were a club on the up. And, to be fair, we've obviously taken strides in Europe this season. We're going to win our 9th treble, which is no mean feat. But I think we always need to look to improve. We always need to look, can we do better in the Champions League? Or if a disaster occurs in August in the playoff, can we go on and win the Europa League? I spoke a few weeks ago about the quality of Europa League winners, and I think 7 of the last 11 winners dropped down from the Champions League. That obviously won't happen again. So, I mean, you've seen it this season. Just the quality of the Europa League it's been more competitive, but maybe the quality's been a bit poorer. So it's a winnable competition. I firmly believe that we are well within our rights to expect to win that the next time that we're in it. So I think we always need to be looking to improve. I think our financial results will look much improved with the new Champions League format when they come out in September. So there's no reason not to go again in the summer transfer window and be even better next season.
I know this is a big thing, and it's something obviously that continually gets brought up with regards to the players that came in. Paddy, we went out with if you like, the Matt O'Reilly money, and we spent it, which was great because we brought 3 players in, 3 guys at the time that you're looking. We needed the calibre of player that Engels was when we brought him in, and like Patrick says, you're bringing in at that time a 20-year-old from the Bundesliga with all that game time under his belt. Absolutely, I think he's been a brilliant signing. Adam Ida up top, I don't think there was many arguments when we were chasing him after what he did last season. And we needed another centre-half. We kind of thought, right, Liam Scales is great, but imagine getting an upgrade. And that's what I think we tried to get with Austin Trusty. Whether or not that is the case is up for debate. How have you felt, Paddy, that those 3 guys are settled since coming to Celtic?
Oh, I personally think Engels and Ida get a bit of a rough time. Ida, I can kind of see why. Sometimes his body language looks a bit as if he's a bit deflated a lot of times, but he's got 19 goals this season, do you know what I mean? So it's not, and I think the majority of them are for the bench. So having to play second fiddle with Kyogo and Maeda, it must be hard, especially when Kyogo goes and Ida thinks he's going to get his big chance, and then Rodgers says, nope, you're still on the bench, son. So that must be quite demoralising. But to be fair, he gets plenty of chances, and even if he misses his chances, he still pops up with the goals. I don't know how many times he was through against Rangers. He could have got a couple against Rangers before he actually tucked that one away in the second half. So he's still there when it matters. Engels, I agree with you. I think he's been excellent this season. A couple of games where he's maybe been a bit probably not his best, but even his return as well. I think he got 10 goals and 14 assists, something like that. Something crazy for midfield. And some of his passing, by the way, like some of his assists, some of his passing has just been out of this world. So I don't quite get why somebody at 21-year-old gets him into flack he does. Maybe there's 11 million reasons for that, but I don't know. But for Trusty, I think the jury's still out in Trusty. I think there's a make. He's a decent defender. He was kind of at fault for the Hibs goal. I thought he was caught wrong-footed, caught under, not under the ball. That's not the right expression, but I think he was caught short with a shot. I think the jury's maybe still on him, but again, it's only his first season. He's came for Sheffield United with a different kind of pressure on him to win every game, and he's got I suppose he could make a decent link up or a decent partnership with CCV. So I think next season might be the one where he needs to step up his game. But as for the other two, I'm relatively happy with, especially with Engels, with what he's delivered this season.
You know, we were speaking last week actually with Alan Morrison when it came to Trusty in particular, because he's the one that I'm on the fence with. I think that you look at some of the difficulties maybe Adam Meader's had at the beginning, obviously then coming in and trying to get up to that match sharpness, and then the second wave being Kyo goes away, I'm going to be number one, didn't quite happen. But beyond all that, you're still expecting him to hit 20 goals this season, which is a tremendous for what seems like a bit of a stop-start season for him. Engels, I think it's unquestionable what he's done. And, you know, we know what kind of player Matt O'Reilly became. But let's go back to when he first came in, maybe the first. Let's look at his start. Was it as productive? Listen, it's very subjective as to was he as good as, but was it as productive as
I mean, his second season, he struggled, didn't he? If I remember right, O'Reilly struggled his second season, whereas Engels, he's kind of, suppose, hit the ground running. So I think once he gets a full pre-season under his belt under Rodgers, I think he'll fly next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right as well. There's a really good point in that, Patrick, where you're saying, how do you prize a player from the Bundesliga? How do you convince them to come to Celtic rather than the other clubs that probably, you know, push that price up by £2 or £3 million? And the big thing is, we're going to give you a platform. We're going to put you into the Champions League, and you will get a bigger move down the line. So when that bigger move comes, then we've got to actually accept it. But I think the caveat always is, don't sell 2 or 3. We can almost handle 1. As long as you then go out and buy another 2 or 3 players of a similar calibre as we did last summer. And that's what we're hoping for. Judging by his Twitter, says Irishman in Porto 2002. Big Yogi is travelling. Yes, sorry, I didn't mention that. Big Yogi, if you are watching this whilst puffing on a cigar and a wee half or something like that. I'm not sure what Big Yogi would drink. A Bucks Fizz, perhaps? A Tia Maria? I'm not sure. If you are watching, make sure you come on and give us loads of abuse, big man. But enjoy your travelling, absolutely. We've also got Skinhead Boy 67. My 11 for Aberdeen. Here we go. Sinisalo, Schlupp, Scales, Nawrocki, Ralston, McKeown, Bernardo, Hatate, Yang, Forrest, and Kenny. There's a lot of people wanting Kenny to play. Tony Ralston, he's a man. Nawrocki, he's been a wee bit hard done by, Patrick, is he not?
I think so, yeah. I mean, he came in for those 2 games, didn't he? Was it the game before or after Rangers they played? He certainly played against Rangers at home. I can't remember what the other game was. It was
a game
either
after,
side.
wasn't it? It was a game after.
Was
I'm
it?
sure it's when they get picked for Rangers was a bit of a surprise, I think.
Aye. Was it Hearts after the International? That was the game immediately after, wasn't it?
I think so, aye.
29th of March. I thought he played all right. There was, in the ground, to be fair, in the ground, I was actually quite frustrated with him, but we were losing at that point in the game, so I was more exasperated than normal. You know, those times where the ball would sort of roll in front of him and he wouldn't take control of the situation, and that's really not what you need from a centre-half in a derby when you're losing. Just get your foot in the ball, play the ball forward. But when you look back at the game, he done his defensive duties well, and I think it's these sort of, I think Yogi said about a year ago, you know, a centre half almost needs to be a playmaker nowadays, and they do, especially at a team like Celtic, the way that we want to play. And I think it's that part of the game that it's just not for him. But backs to the wall, defensive, he wins every header, clears every ball. That aspect is absolutely fantastic, and I think that's the aspect that Trusty might look a bit weak on. I remember up at Dundee around Christmas time, Trusty looked as if he'd never seen a football before. He was that poor or weak as something, as Brendan said on the touchline. So I think he has been hard done by, especially the price he came in for and the serious lack of minutes that he's got. I mean, playing Scales ahead of him, Scales has done well for the majority, but at times he's been really, really poor. You've highlighted it a few times, Paul, that Aston Villa game where young Dane Murray comes in and is also never seen again. He comes in and then a month later, Navrosky is chosen ahead of him to come into that centre half pair. Some of the decisions, really do boggle the mind, but I'd be surprised if Navrosky's here next season because he doesn't seem to be favoured, even when he plays well. He's not favoured, so I think he can count himself hard done by.
Absolutely. You look at his Celtic career. So this season he's made 4 appearances, 2 in the league, 1 in the Scottish Cup, 1 in the League Cup. 203 minutes of football. Bear in mind, I think we played, is it 55 games now? 50. This will be our 55th tonight, something along those lines.
Yep.
I mean, that's just not enough football for anybody. You go further back, you look at his first season at Celtic, and he makes 10 appearances in the league, 1 in the League Cup and 2 in the Scottish Cup. And you're thinking to yourself, that's not enough football for someone who's now 24 years of age. He had kind of played all the underaged football right up to becoming a full international. His career seemed to be on the up and up, and it's just hit a brick wall. So there comes a point, Paddy, where you say, for everybody's good, it's probably best that you move on. But unfortunately, because of the lack of game time, you're in a scenario where you've basically got to go out on loan, haven't you, and prove yourself to your new club. So it could be another season after this one where we're able to offload him permanently.
I think Legia were interested in taking him back in loan. I can't remember if it was I think it was a January window, but for some reason it never happened. But I think I agree with you. It's baffling. I mean, you've got to ask who sanctioned the move. Now I know Brendan Rodgers says that he kind of signs off every move there is at Celtic, but somebody must have put together a pretty impressive list of stats or a package to convince him that he was worth spending £4 million on. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to question who recommended them to Celtic or whatever. But anyway, I don't know. It's a strange one. To me, he looks like the kind of defender that we like. Big, tall, strong, big, no scared of a tackle. But like young Patrick says, he just seems to, I think he struggles with the kind of way that we want to play for the back. So maybe that's the reason why Rodgers doesn't fancy him. I don't know who's going to buy him. I don't know who would pay the money that we want to get back. But then we somehow pulled out a miracle and got £5 million back for what's his name?
Wee Bernabei,
aye. So maybe a loan move will do him good if we can send them back to Legia. Whether he gives back the £4 million we paid it, I don't know. But it's a bit of a strange one. I'd like to see more of him, but it's just not going to happen. If it's not happening now after 55 games, it's not going to happen at all, I don't think.
No. And the big thing as well, we always go on about back in the good old days where there was a reserve league where even if you weren't playing for the first team, you were playing regular minutes.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't happen. So these guys are in purgatory. They just don't play. They're going to training every day. They're in squads. You see Scott Bain got a mention in the press conference yesterday by Brendan Rodgers as well.
He's some laugh, isn't he?
He's some laugh. He's great.
Jokes must be brilliant, by the way, to get paid £10,000 a week to tell jokes in the dressing room.
I know. He always remembers the kids. Absolutely. We're talking about being back in the day. And today, back in 1988, sorry, Patrick, back in 1988, Celtic won the Scottish Cup on this day, the 14th of May. We beat Dundee United. It was just like it's captured in the memory banks as being like the sunniest day ever at Hampden. The cameras couldn't handle the sun back then. They just couldn't regulate the sun and the balance, could they? So that was a tremendous season. And of course, we won the Scottish Cup against a very good Dundee United team. Coming to the end, it cycle a wee bit, I think, Paddy, the Dundee United side. McAvenny. Aye, McAvenny was a hero. I think about half a dozen Celtic players shared the bottle of peroxide around about that time. Chris Morris, Derek White, Peter Grant, they were all up to it, weren't they? What's your memories of that? Paddy, you'd have been a young spud like me.
I remember. I would have been 11 years old at that time. So, and I remember going to the Glasgow Garden Festival the summer after we won the double, and I met Stevie Chalmers at the Glasgow Garden Festival. A massive crowd around him, and he was there with, I'm sure he had a green he had his dress trousers on and a green Celtic jumper, and we were all just kind of going daft. But in regards to that season, that's probably the one that and the 1986 League Cup, the league win against Hearts. Remember Walter Thingy Kid Day? The other two standouts for when I was a kid. But I do remember watching that cup final. And I remember, I think it was at Hearts, we beat the semi-final in the same kind of manner with 2 late goals, if I remember right, that season as well.
Absolutely.
And I remember being 1-0 behind after Kevin Gallagher scored, and I was like, oh, Jesus, we're going to lose this because no way we're going to come back again. But when we did a goal in the 70-odd minutes, and then Macca pops up, the scenes in my house that day were unreal. I would take that again at the end of this month, but I would rather just spanked them 3-0 in the first half and just get the treble and done with. But that season's probably, out of everything that I've experienced as Celtic fans, probably one of the top as a youngster. And like you said at the start of the show, I've been through the 90s, being in the jungle, watching us win nothing. I've been at Hampden, watching us win nothing. So treat every trophy win as you can, because you don't know if it's going to be your last. You just don't know. So I remember that fondly. That's probably one of my top memories of being a kid, a Celtic fan.
Unbelievable. I remember that was actually the season I started being taken to the games. 1987 was my first game, Paddy. And then after that, I thought, is this how it is? Winning doubles, last minute goals. Like you say, against Hearts. We had Paddy Bonner at one of our events last year, at the end of last year. And he still hasn't forgiven David McPherson because he actually absolutely clatters him. Honestly, if that had gone to VAR, that goal's getting chopped off. And Hearts were a goal up. And you'll remember Mark McGee came on as a sub, didn't he? And he caused havoc against Hearts in the semi-final. And then the final was just brilliant. Absolutely true. You remember everything. You do. You absolutely remember everything about that game. Give Maggie the red card. I even remember the type of boots Tommy Burns was wearing. We spoke about them, the black with the big luminous yellow swoosh on them. And his interview after the game, everything, part of folklore. And Patrick McGilp sitting there going, I've seen the video footage, but I can't. It was 20 years before I was born or something like that, right?
I didn't want to think of that, man. That makes me feel sick.
That was quite a few years before you joined, not only Acsom, but you joined us, Patrick, because you're just a young spud, aren't you?
I was 12 and a half years before I was born.
Wow.
So that was, as you say, Paul John, I've seen all the videos, so it feels as if I was there. I was there on my red card.
You've known nothing but success. You're one of the spoiled Celtic fans now. You've known nothing but trebles. So you must think it's just normality.
I know. That one Neil Lennon season during COVID, that was the one blip in my record so far.
Yeah.
That's the only season that we've not won the league since I've been a season ticket holder. Up until that point, the second Ronnie Dyler season was as low as it got for me, which shows you how spoiled I was.
you shouldn't have gone up to the park and chucked the Harris fence about, though. That was
no,
one step too far.
No, I was the boy with the shark. That was me.
Right. Listen, it actually takes us on to something I wanted to talk about yesterday, but we ran out of time. There was a really good article. We were kind of talking about it in the group chat. Stephen McGowan has written an article in relation to the impact or otherwise of Dermot Desmond. I don't think his impact can be questioned. But the headline was Absentee Landlord or Celtic Mastermind. And yeah, I think the closing gambit was along the lines of, as long as we keep winning trophies, nobody's going to moan about it. I'm not so sure about that, Patrick, because we like a moan, right? But we're going to get to that point where we're thinking, do you want to go through a 9 in a row like we did last time, where we're not really progressed in Europe, we're not really doing anything great to the stadium, we're not really producing young players, or do you want to have the domination and tick all those boxes as well? Because if so, brilliant, you're a mastermind. If not, you're complacent. And I don't just mean him, I just mean as a club, the culture of the football club. So I think it's okay to compare these two 9, or if we indeed go on, we're on a run at the moment of consecutive league title wins, and say, what can we do better? And even that sounds a wee bit spoiled. How can you do 9 in a row better? I hear you ask. Well, you can produce better young players. We already have the recruitment kind of thing sorted. I think that we're pretty good at that. The model. You can have a better stadium, a bigger stadium, and you can do better in Europe. Is it wrong to have these ambitions as fans, Patrick? Because if the club don't have that ambition, I think that might end up becoming an issue.
Yeah, I mean, we get teased all the time about, doesn't it get boring winning things all the time? But I think, but certainly before COVID, I think you were in danger of entering a period where, you're sweeping up all before you domestically, but you're getting absolutely battered in the league, not even getting through qualifiers. And the chasm was becoming so wide that, maybe 10, 20 years down the line, there would be some sort of upset or malaise around the club where it would force Desmond's hand, if he's around in 20 years' time, that is. But, to be fair, the last 4 years, our European record has sort of been up and up. The last 4 seasons, you can definitely say a benchmark. We've got further and further every single season. And, long may that continue. As Stephen McGowan highlighted in his article, the domestic success can't be argued with. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous, some of the numbers. I think he said it took us 80 years to get our first 47 trophies, and we've got 47 trophies in the 30 years since Dermot Desmond walked in, which is absolutely unbelievable, totally ridiculous. And it's absolutely credit to him, to Peter Lawwell, to everyone that has been there the last 30 years. Fergus McCann, obviously, the main man. As a business, we have been run absolutely spectacularly, commercially, maximising revenues, staying clear of debt. It's a fantastic operation. The commercial partnerships with Adidas and other sort of reputable sports brands, it's fantastic. There's obviously questions to be asked football-wise, as you say. Did we capitalise in that first 9 in a row? Absolutely not. We won the league 9 times, but we only get into the Champions League 4 times. And I think we only won, obviously, the first Lennon season, we won a few games, but I think under Brendan, I don't think we won a home game. The 6 home games we had under Brendan, I don't think we won a game. So obviously massive question marks over our European fortunes in that sort of spell. But we are getting better now, and we do need to keep getting better, because I don't think there's going to be some sort of uprising like there was in 1994, but there we could certainly fall into a malaise if it does, like in the last decade. We're winning leagues and all that quite easily, quite handily, but we're getting absolutely pasted in Europe. That can't be acceptable. I think the overarching point is correct, though. I think there's certainly not going to be some sort of takeover or some sort of fan revolt while we're winning all these trophies. I think that'd be quite unlikely. But I think he even spoke about that Sinisalo situation that we spoke about earlier. The board didn't put out a statement, but he mentioned it in his press conference. There's maybe fan discontent with how weak or how absent we can be when it comes to sort of boardroom action. And as well as that, the Brendan Rodgers comment about Dyson Maeda talking to Dermot Desmond about a contract extension. You think that's the opposite of being an absentee landlord. That's a guy who, control freakery. I think people used to say that about Peter Lawwell, if anything, they get involved too much in things that he really should have left alone. And I think Dermot Desmond can, judging by that comment, can be guilty of that as well. So, you can have no complaints financially, commercially. The last 4 years have been brilliant, and we are on the up. But maybe the football side could have been a wee bit better at certain points during his ownership.
You mentioned Wrexham earlier on, right? And I'm not saying, listen, we model or sell on Wrexham, but I'll tell you something they have done right, and that's around the community aspect, the engagement aspect of actually engaging with fans groups, media groups who are fan driven. Because back in the kind of days of big banners on seats and all that kind of stuff, there was a real push for that engagement. Peter Lawwell went on a wee kind of road tour and was going to Greenock, for example, the CSC, and speaking to people. That wouldn't happen now. Why? Because we're winning. Why? Because we've got a high-profile manager and season tickets are sold out. Why stop it? Why stop it when all that kind of stuff's been maximised? Continue and build those relationships, not just with supporters clubs, but with associations. Kev Graham will tell you the club would never have to phone to him when he was part of the association, and we weren't maximising gate revenue back then. So, Paddy, I mean, we could also probably talk about that in a media sense with regards to the lack of engagement that we actually get from the football club. You know, here's a launch of a new item that I want you to buy. Here's another new kit. Here's your season tickets, etc., etc., etc. But a real lack of engagement. And I think if you can build these bridges when we're doing well, it bodes well. Maybe when things aren't going so well, as well, you can build these relationships. Because I don't think, and again, I'm going to throw the ultras in there as well. It's almost as if, you know, they're the enemy and the club aren't really willing to engage with them. I think that's wrong. I think that's one thing the club doesn't get right. For all the great stuff they do, and Patrick's right, they do a lot of great stuff. I think the engagement side of things needs to improve, Paddy.
I mean, what's happened to the fan survey that was done, I think, about 12 months ago, isn't it? Where is that?
Where is it?
I don't know what's happened to that. It was like this whole singing, all dancing, big announcement for the club about doing a fan survey and engaging with you, and we ought to know your opinion. I tell you what, the opinions must have been shocking if they've not published it yet. So maybe we need to redact a lot of the points that have been made. But I agree with you. I think that the fan engagement is awful with the club. Even the launch of the new strip, it was just, let's just do a Twitter post, release a video, and charge them £120 for the privilege of buying it. It's madness. So I think that's definitely something to look forward to. And like you say, if we do go through a season where we don't win the league, or if Rangers eventually get their act together, the board might get a bit of leeway with the fans, because we can see a clear vision or a clear path of what the board are trying to achieve, whether it be domestic or in the European stage. So I think that definitely needs to be an area the club look at how they go about it. I don't know, maybe publishing the results of that ghost phantom survey might help. So let's see what they say about that. But they've definitely got to up their game there, I think.
We've got a habit of doing it. I remember we brought in Gordon Strachan, remember, to do the consultancy stuff. And then no one ever heard anything again. And it wasn't until Gordon Strachan joined us at a live event last year that he opened up on some of the stuff that he had reported back to the football club. That's never been made.
What about the football doctor as well? We hired back. Where's he been?
Maybe he's the guy that's dealing with the fan survey, Paddy.
Right, yeah, that's the one.
We've cracked it.
What's he up to these days? Who knows? But who knows?
And the thing is, it's not like we're asking for an audience with Peter Lawwell or Dermot Desmond here. We're just saying, look, you've got everything on it, you know, in your hand here, in the palm of your hand. You've got the fan base who are enjoying what they're seeing. We're enjoying the fact that this domination's here. We've bought into a manager who, you know, had almost been airbrushed out the history book. We bought back into him. Everything's good. You know, things are going well. And it's at that point that you just embrace it. And then you start getting the ultras back on side. You get the associations back on side, the fan media groups and all this kind of stuff. But it seems to be a direct correlation between success equals, I will just keep you at arm's length. Right, and it shouldn't be like that. I'm looking forward to tonight's game as always. We're going to be on half an hour before kickoff. I'll be joined by Chris McElwain, Double Denim, and there might be a few others who are willing to join us as well for the chat 30 minutes before kickoff. We've got a gig coming up. It's Alan Stubbs and Tosh McKinley, two of the guys that stopped the 10. Never should that be forgotten. They stopped the 10. Big Stubbsy had been bought by Tommy Burns after Tosh McKinley had come to the club under Tommy as well. Only £15 for two guests, and the ticket link is underneath this video. Now, thanks everybody for getting involved, and for the two Paddies, thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Hail, hail.